Hello and welcome to Horseplayer Happy Hour. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, coming to you live from the Little House on the East Side. We have an array of guests coming in, including this guy, if you can see him. Hello. Drew Coatney, our reigning BCBC champion, will be with us. But we have some other guests, too. We've got a live race from slightly rainy Saratoga coming as well. But why don't we kick things off in the pre-tape while we get things organized, and we will start it off with a very familiar face to anybody watching this channel. Next up, happy to reintroduce one of the founding members of not just the In the Money Players podcast team, but very specifically the Horseplayer Happy Hour team. He is coming to us from an undisclosed location in New England, courtesy of the folks at FanDuel TV/TVG. He is Matt Bernier. What's going on, Matt?
Pete, we are in the dog days of summer. I mean that in the best way possible. You know, we've got the best racing going on both coasts, Del Mar, Saratoga. We've got Group 1 racing overseas during the middle of the week. What else could you possibly ask for? So, no, all's well. And I think the countdown for me, anyway, is already on, pointing toward the Breeders' Cup, because this is really when the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. And we're going to talk Breeders' Cup Classic in this segment. First, though, a little tangent. What are the odds that we will be seeing you here in Saratoga before the meet is over?
I will say 0, unfortunately.
Okay.
I will not be heading north. I guess north for me would be actually be west. But no, I will not be making it up to Saratoga. I am home for the month of August. I get to kind of take a little bit of a breath. I'm going to be doing all of my work Monday through Friday here from my little studio, my office here, and then back on the road. My next trip will be Kentucky Downs, Labor Day weekend. We'll kick things off down there. I'll be there for the entire 5-day meeting.
Fantastic. I'm looking to get down there myself. We'll rendezvous there. This is so we're recording this Tuesday, and this is a funny situation where we do have this race on Wednesday that will have happened by the time this airs for a horse who's a big long shot in the betting right now, but Paddington, one of the ones who's in this betting. Of course, there's really, like, I see it's almost like 3 groups of horses, right? You've got that, and any other potential wild invaders. You've got these 3-year-olds who are all going to be lining up in the Travers in the betting for this race. But then you've got the horse at the very top of the market right now at 7-1, who we're going to see in the Whitney this weekend, Cody's Wish. Where do you stand on this idea of Cody's Wish at 7-1 right now for the Breeders' Cup Classic? Is it, I mean, it might look like stealing money after we see this Whitney on Saturday, but of course, that's a fairly big if. Where do you stand on this horse as a classic contender as of this moment?
I guess if you're telling me that 7-1 is potential, now again, we're not talking about day of for the Breeders' Cup Classic, but if he's 7-1 right now, I think that's an absolute bargain. I'm not terribly concerned about the 2-turn configuration for him. He just feels like he's a more complete racehorse now than the times prior when he has gone 2 turns. And I don't know, tell me if you agree or disagree. I keep going through, I look at these 3-year-olds, I go, all right, I'm kind of getting tired of them already. I think they kind of take turns. They all run similar races time and time again. And frankly, I don't think any of them are that close to being ready to take on a horse like Cody's Wish if he fires his A game.
Now, maybe the one exception to that, if you believe all the talk that we've heard about Mage in terms of being 80% or whatever it was for the Haskell. You know, if you can add 20% onto what we saw there, that would put him in range. Are you not particularly buying that argument? Do you need to see more from him on the racetrack before you anoint him a proper Breeders' Cup Classic contender?
No, in terms of the layout, I happened to run into Ramiro before the Haskell earlier on in the day, and he kind of said, we're hoping for just a good finish. If we win, absolutely, it's fantastic, but we just want to see a good finish. It'll be primed, ready to go for the Travers. And it's not that I think he's an inadequate horse by any stretch. I think he is arguably the best 3-year-old there is. But even, let's say you tack on 10 points. He's got a career best fig of what, low 100? Did he get to a 105 for the Derby? I don't even remember off the top of my head. I just think
low hundreds, but I'm going to look that up now.
So let's say a 102. I know Arcangelo got a 102 in the Belmont or somewhere thereabouts. I mean, Cody's Wish, I'm expecting him to run at least a 110, if not better than that. So these 3-year-olds, this is the time of year where they do improve. I just still think that they need to take a substantial step forward here. And I don't mean to make it sound like I'm cold watering that whole division, but I personally feel like Cody's Wish right now is kind of on an island.
Well, that's 7-1 going to be looking very interesting. So yeah, it was a 105 in the Derby. So you can make that case. He right now made 12-1 for the Classic. Forte, off the controversial win in the Jim Dandy, 9-1. Arcangelo, 10-1. That trio going to be lining up in a few weeks in the Travers. If it sounds like, as you said, you've got Cody's Wish on an island, so I'm not going to ask you the same question several times in a row. Instead, I'll ask you, of those three, which one do you like potentially as an early bet in the Travers? And I believe there is some early betting on that, so I'll pull up those numbers as well so we can talk with a little bit of context. But just on the square, as it were, where are you most interested as of now for the Travers Stakes this year?
Well, I keep looking over at a monitor to see what my Breeders' Cup Classic top 10 that I put in was, and this is going to kind of contradict it a little bit, but obviously from a gambling standpoint, they're two separate things. I have Arcangelo listed as the highest 3-year-old right now. I had him listed as 4th behind Cody's Wish, Smile Happy, and West Willpower. I know some folks don't love that I have Smile Happy that high, and West Willpower, unfortunately, has been retired with an injury. So Arcangelo and everyone else kind of slots up a rung there. I want to know where Go Rocket Ride's going to go, because while I don't know that I think he is absolutely there just yet, if for whatever reason they chose to go to the Travers and he's the 4th choice in that race, like we just saw a couple weeks ago in the Haskell, I'd be more inclined to give him a look than I would a Forte or a Mage or even an Arcangelo. But I have to be honest, Arcangelo may be the 3rd choice of those big 3 names that we talked about, which to me, that would probably represent some value, price pending.
So for Travers right now, Forte 2, Arcangelo 3, Mage 4, Angel of Empire 5, Go Rocket Ride not listed in the betting for the Travers. I think the rumor I heard, and it's just rumor as of this point, though that market certainly seems to back it up, was that they were thinking Pack Classic for him, which would certainly be interesting. Home game out there. In terms of Breeders' Cup Classic odds, Go Rocket Ride listed at 12-1 right now, the same as Mage and also the one we started this conversation with, Paddington. So if that gives you any more to pick on, but yeah, I think Go Rocket Ride unlikely for the Travers, unfortunately. But we're still looking at a race. One other interesting thing I noted is National Treasure listed in the betting for the Travers, but very cold in a way that makes me wonder if there isn't an alternate plan brewing for him. But boy, do I love the idea of having Derby, Preakness, Belmont, 2-year-old Champ all in the same Travers. Wonder what the last time that happened was. We need a proper historian to go digging on that.
Is there a price? I'll button up the Travers anyway. Well, first things first, I Go Rocket Ride in the Pacific Classic after what we saw at Del Mar over the past weekend. Have at it, bud. I mean, you're probably the favorite in that race because I don't think much of the older horses in Southern California right now. For the Travers, is Scotland listed? Do you have a price on Scotland? Because he'd probably be.
Scotland is listed.
If I had to make a pick right now, I'd probably pick him because I think he's actually. I loved him early on. I happened to score on him when he broke his maiden. I think he's got an abundance of talent. I know the trip in the Curlin was as candy gets. I think he's a very talented racehorse.
Does 12-1 do anything for you for the Travers for Scotland?
No, 12 is, well, I shouldn't say that. If he's 12 and the others are kind of 3-4, yeah, maybe. Yeah, actually, frankly, now I think about it more, that's about, an 8% chance, 7 or 8%. Yeah, I would say 12. Wouldn't go any lower than that, but I think Scotland at least deserves a shout in there.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with these 3-year-olds. I still feel like we don't know, how good they are. And I think, the Mage question mark is just huge. If he builds on what we saw and gets up to those Cody's Wish numbers, if we get Cody doing Cody-like things going 9, I mean, it could be a very interesting showdown. Of course, you love the idea of international participation. That you figure Paddington ultimately probably ends up in the mile. Again, we'll know so much. I feel silly even talking about this horse in that we'll have this key data point with win and you're in Breeders' Cup action in the middle of the week tomorrow. But it's going to be fun to follow all year long. if you're game to do this again, Matt, why don't we do this for some other divisions? We can do some little cutouts, some pre-tapes, bring you on at your leisure, and make sure fans get to see your face on these Horseplayer Happy Hour broadcasts. Just give us a quick update since we've last seen you on these airwaves. Your summer's been going pretty well. I mean, you must love being able to work from home and be with the family for a few weeks.
Yeah, it's nice. And my bosses at FanDuel, they've been very, very kind and very sort of amenable to give me, I'm still working 5 days a week, but at least I can be here, take a little bit of a breath. We've got family in the area that, want to be able to come through and check everything out. So it's good to be able to take a little bit of a breather, and then back on the road in September, October, in through the Breeders' Cup. And then for me, it's kind of segment things leading all to Gulfstream, where I'll be down for the meeting. I'll get down there beginning of December right through April this year.
Fantastic. Well, we'll be hanging there. We'll follow your exploits on FanDuel TV and on your own podcast and wherever else you turn up. Matt Bernier, thanks for joining us today.
Anytime, my friend.
From one of the In the Money originals to another, I sit here now with Drew Coatney. You had an interesting trip to get to Saratoga. Tell us how that went down.
Yeah, we did the train, a little sleeper train activity. So we got on at 3 a.m. in Toledo. They said, "Oh, Nancy Drew, right this way. Your room's ready." And settled in. Took
Nancy and Drew being the first names of the Coatneys. For those that don't get that guy.
Yes, no, not the mystery novel that I aspire to be.
Perrin would be very excited though. Big Nancy Drew fan over there.
No, not traveling solo with my wife across the table. And we had a great time. Got a lot of handicapping. Look forward to the rest of this contest here. Went from 1st to 31st, and then the rest of the Saratoga action is loaded. So it was a great ride.
So, yeah, you've had some success in these contests, but we got to see if we can get you up into the top 10% today. We had 155 entries. So the top 15 are going to advance to the competition on Saturday, the $189 direct qualifier to the Breeders' Cup betting challenge. But as we always point out on these shows, you also have the Happy Hour, the Horseplayer Happy Hour Tour itself, 2 other BCBC seats, 1 for the person who does best throughout the season, best 8 scores for that one. And then you also have the ability to qualify for our playoffs by finishing either in the top 2 any week or having the highest overall scores throughout the tour that didn't get the maximum entries to the playoffs. Anyway, you play along every week. It's $20. The house cut goes to charity, the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, and the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. It's been a lot of fun, and we've got a great group of regulars. Let's see who's checked in the comments so far. And we love to give shout outs, and feel free to ask any questions and let us know where you are in the world. Richard says, "Happy Whitney weekend." We love that. We've got a South African viewer. Love that. Dan, great to hear from you. Richard Alvilvar. I'm actually mispronouncing that. I think I got it right. I don't know what it is with me and double L's lately. Alviar. I'm going with that.
Alviar.
You tell me if that's right, Richard. Checking in, pointing out that Bill Mott has had another winner. Rob Capalbo, I got to have a beer with him by the paddock the other day. He was out at, speaking of Thoroughbred Aftercare, he was at the Casamigos party for the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation last night and apparently missed getting his picks in. That's quite the hangover there. And then Richard mentions again that Go Rocket Ride, his pick for the Classic. That was fun talking to Matt about that. Be interesting to see how that horse develops as time goes on. It's going to be a great race towards the Classic. We'll be covering it in and out. Started there with Matt Bernier, and we did have, it's not exactly breaking news as it was yesterday morning, but an update if you're just watching along now, that Paddington did get the job done and did so in most impressive fashion, taking runs throughout the race. In a way, it reminded me of Smarty Jones in the 2004 Belmont, every different horse taking runs at him. But unlike Smarty, he kept right on going. Yeah. This horse, they're campaigning him very similarly to Giants Causeway, who ended his career in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Paddington sounds more likely for the mile. We're going to talk about this later with Callum Hellowell, who'll be coming in. But that was a hell of a performance at Glorious Goodwood yesterday. I know you were watching. You're sick enough to be betting races at 9 in the morning.
It is. And I didn't actually get my bet in. I had a meeting. I couldn't put the bet in, and I wanted to bet against Paddington. And I was like, oh, there goes Aladar to get him. Oh, there goes that move to get him. And he just kept delivering. Paddington, as true as the child's character he is.
It is a great name.
Stayed the moral fiber he is. Oh my gosh.
He's a tough horse. He's a tough horse and going to be a threat. Hopefully, whichever Breeders' Cup race he shows up for, potentially the mile, potentially the Classic. We'll get Callum Hellawell's opinion on that one a little bit later in the show. But we've got some other business, including this leaderboard. Let's see. Drew had a sneak peek at it before, but we'll take a look at what's going on there. Our new leader is Richard Scangarello, an Italian one. That's easier for me. Kirk Rockwell, Mark Stovall, Kevin Lux, Andrew Whelan, Michael Oldham, Joel Balthazar, Stephen McNatton, Jim Colbert, David Barrier, Evan Trommer, Basil DeVito, good to see his name on there, David Chen, Brandon Snodglass, Silky Wilkie, Seth Wilkie, and Matt Miller, who I just saw in the paddock at Saratoga before 2 races ago there. I'm running around today, but was over in the paddock at Saratoga to see my horse, Gem Mint 10, for a Delphi Racing Club run very well. One of these, it depends on how you look at it. The way that I look at the world, he ran a hell of a race. He tried all the way to the line. It was a great result, did everything but win. And, he's a horse who's going to make that condition. And that's just wonderful. I mean, just to be in the paddock and see your horse run well at Saratoga, you're winning at life. Of course, there's also the frustration of, oh man, how close we were to taking that picture in the winner's circle at Saratoga. Speaking of priceless experiences, but hey, that bit wasn't meant to be, but a hell of a run from this tough New York bred, who I'm excited to see more from this summer. You guys, the weather derailed you. You were meant to be there in the paddock with us.
Yes, yeah, the weather derailed us a little bit here and there. We were sitting at the Toledo Amtrak station, which is a lovely place to be at 2:30 in the morning for an extra hour than anticipated. But we got here in good shape, and good thing Jen Minton didn't win, because I don't know if you would be here right now.
It would have been very close. I think we probably would have had to start the show with the 2 pre-tapes.
I'm thinking Nancy's jumping on the other side of the table and we're leading this thing off saying, how's it going? But no, and Brad Anderson and Matt Miller went from, I think, like 60th or 70th to now 15th. So I went from 1st to 31st, and they went the other way. So at least someone's doing good.
All right. Well, we always try to get out on the @InTheMoney Twitter, congratulate our winners at the end of these Horseplayer Happy Hour events to give them props. It's really fun when we're on for the end of these shows, which happens sometimes, and we can share that with you. We have a good question. Yeah, pull up the next race so I don't run over and forget to do that. But we do have a good question from Richard. Do you think Forte should have been disqualified from his last start? Now, JK and I were oppo on this one. JK said on air, 90, and he predicted 95% chance the horse is going to come down. I said the literal exact opposite. The people I was sitting with, 95% chance he stays up. Now, watching it subsequently, I understand the takedown case. I still kind of feel like there was enough wiggle room that when there's wiggle room, that you don't make a change. I thought that Desert Crown coming out was part of the reason for the first foul in the race. Others have said they think that Desert Crown was clear and could have done whatever he wanted in that spot, and that it should have been a foul. So for you'll chime in with your opinion, Drew, assuming you're up on this issue and have watched the replay as many times, or at least half as many times, or a quarter of as many times as JK and I have. But yeah, we sort of got to the agree to disagree on this one. I was okay with that result, and believe me, as a bettor, I needed him to come down. My entire bet in all the late picks was anti-Forte. I never thought he was coming down. And I thought that maybe some of Irad's previous antics were part of the reason why so many people were so vociferous. But a lot of smart people, including the entire Fox team, were saying he should have come down. Yeah. Where did you land?
I landed on a place of after letting it sink in, because you didn't like it. You really didn't like it. But did Forte hurt himself more than actually people think? Right? He did cause interference, but I think he took away from his own run, more or less, by bumping and throwing himself off stride to then finally get up and get the victory. So if you're looking at it, and again, I'm not an official on the whole stewards
rule.
You
haven't been to stewarding school?
No, nor have Pat Cummins slap my hand on what I'm about to say. But if you're looking at the top 2 finishers in that race, I think Forte did himself a disservice in that bump early on, bullying himself out. Whether or not Irad did it out of safety may be another conversation, but I kind of think it was the right thing, even though I don't like it.
All right. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, Richard seems to be of the DQ mindset. Believe me, I'd have a much fatter wallet had that happen. And if we could get that if and or but, and I could get the if and or but of Portos having a longer nose yesterday, we'd really be having a hell of a Saratoga meet. But we got time to come. We got time to come here. We got 13 minutes till the 7th race at Saratoga. Let's talk about this one from a contest point of view, real quickly, Drew, so maybe people can follow us in on their bets. Curious to know who you played in this race and what you think's going to happen for anybody watching along with the Saratoga 7th race today.
Yeah, I played the 4, and granted, I hate that I played the 4 in this pick and pray format now because I need some ground to make up being 31st. I need to get up 15 more places, but I think this goes a little chalky the rest of the sequence, so it might be the way to go. And so I just thought this horse was going to get the perfect trip. It's progressing nicely in figures. In Bill Mott, we trust type of thing as well. But overall figures are good on this one. And I just don't see a ton of speed. So it can either be kind of doing his own thing, pressing, or just sitting right off of it. So I think the betting public agrees with this, with the projected odds being at 1-2 with live odds set at 3-2.
Wow. So that's interesting. A 3-2 shot that might come in from here. If you were betting this race fresh right now, if this were a live contest, I'm assuming you would not be going for that 4-horse who's going to be somewhere between 1-2 and 3-2, and that you'd look for something a little bit longer in the odd spectrum. What do you have? What alternatives do you have? Did you use anything as an alternate pick that's coming in at a bit of a price here?
Yeah, I think I threw in an alternate pick for the fun of it. I would probably go with the 6 security code. 4-1 is the projected odds. It's going to drift down a little bit off of 9-2. Tried to clunk up and do a speed race last time, and it was closer favoring, but 3 back at the 7 furlongs at Aqueduct. Really liked that move to get the job done in the optional claimer, and ran a 91, which is, I mean, granted, yeah, the 4 ran a 103 last time on the time form figures, but if any reversal of form can happen, career best type of thing, the 6 doesn't look too out of the question if 4 can reverse form a little bit.
It's interesting to note that time form has this as a race without any speed, which always makes the eye go a little bit more towards these runners on the pace projector anyway. We're going to be positioned forward. In this case, that would be the 2, the 4, and the 6. Do you give the 2, Ray Handel and Katie Davis, any kind of shot to get involved here?
4-year-old volatility at Saratoga, absolutely. I mean, if things break in the right way, this horse has already ran a 94 in an allowance back in Aqueduct as well. So yeah, I think that might be a good way to go as well. If you really need to clunk up or get some value, if I was stuck in a contest, this might be a place where you play a 2 into a double of 2 others to fill a minimum. And at the minimum, no pun intended or no duplicity meant, you're going to get really paid on this at 10-1.
Well, that's the way that I'm leaning at the moment. 11-1 on the board at the moment. Might come in a little bit. We've got seeing the rainy paddock there at Saratoga. Over here on the little bit north of that location on the east side, it looks to have stopped for the moment, which is good given that we're meant to have an outdoor event here tonight. We'll see. We might have to get very, very creative. You think we could project a movie up on that wall? Maybe. We'll have to see what happens as we get a little bit closer. Just generally, when you're playing in these pick and pray contests, how much time do you spend looking at the leaderboard and trying to figure out who above you has what? I mean, do you play that game? Do you go down that rabbit hole, or are you more just concerned with rooting yourself in until the last race or two?
That's a great question, because in live cash contests, I could care less about the leaderboard.
Sure.
Until the very last race.
But here, where you can see the picks of everybody else, I think it gives you some idea. I mean, in theory, it's not going to be in reality, but in theory, you could be, if you were, trying to finish in the top 2 for the exacta to qualify for our playoffs, you could be thoroughly blocked from here and know, okay, well, I'm not even going to bother rooting for that.
I absolutely love rooting for it because it's a great example to use $20 in an event that not only gives money back to charity, we'll put that great thing aside on the hill, but it gives you an exercise to put $20 to root for a sequence of races to say whether or not you were right and where you're going to finish amongst a bunch of other people. Who cares if you finish 40th? I mean, granted, you want to finish in the top, but if you're out of it and you think, hey, I can have 5 out of 9 winners, but I'm still going to finish 40th, in cash contests, you can make that into some real money.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's worth pointing out is getting able to see a player who you might know. You can root for your friends that way through looking at the scores on the leaderboard, or maybe you know somebody that's particularly sharp or on a great roll and look at their picks and maybe throw those horses into a spread race, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun contest, and I'm happy to answer the Carl Spackler question if we want to do that now.
Yeah, let's do it. We got a question about Carl Spackler, and I think it's the Della Rose tomorrow. Oh, I'll also point out a cool thing that folks may not know. There's some really interesting potential wagers this weekend. So you've got a 2-day pick six they're doing, an all stakes 2-day pick six starting on Friday in this race, in this Carl Spackler race, which is the Della Rose. Am I getting that right? No, Carl Spackler is in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. The Della Rose is on Saturday, but the Hall of Fame, I believe, is the first race in this 2-day pick six. Also, there's a cross-country, cross-breed bet on Saturday because it's Hamiltonian Day. So we've got a ton of extra content on that. On the late week show, which will drop as soon as we finish this show and do our Woodbine segment, we've got a segment with Mike and Ray from our harness side, giving their thoughts on that one. And then there's also going to be a deep dive tonight, live stream on YouTube tonight. I think it's 9 or 9:30. You can check that schedule. They're going to be doing the deep dive for the players who are more familiar with standardbred racing and harness in general. But if you just want to sort of get the high notes and have some numbers to play in your cross country pick fives, you have the chance to do that. Just listening to our late week show again. They'll drop very soon.
In those races, the harness will go off later in the night. So
it's a day card.
Okay.
It's a day card.
I was hoping for the later.
We're going to be going back and forth. But the other fun thing about that is those races are happening every 14, 15 minutes.
Right.
So it's Action Jackson.
Yeah.
So check out what those guys gave us on the late week show and also their own podcast. That's going to be fun. Okay, so Carl Spackler in the Hall of Fame. This one is about 24 hours from now. 5:08 p.m. is the scheduled post time. Some very familiar names in here, including the likes of Nagarok and General Jim. It sounded like I have yet to handicap this race properly. I will give you my quick thought, but it sounds like you had an opinion ready to go on this one. Are you with or against the greenskeeper, Carl Spackler?
Yeah, so I always play in fictitious contests because there's no contest on Friday of cash value.
Yeah, explain what you mean by that.
What I'll do is
not mythical money.
Not mythical money. I'll start with the amount of cash. Instead of playing a pick 4, pick 5, I will start with the amount of cash and write out how I would play it with 2 entries, dividing that money, and play it as it is. And I would give myself the right to say I'm not going to make that last push, right? If I start with $200 and make $2,000 and then fire $2,000, it's not the same in the context of the contest.
Yes.
So in this scenario, my whole goal is to go Elusive Princess in the Oaks Invitational into 3 horses.
Okay.
One of those is Carl Spackler, tepidly. And I say tepidly because I just don't know if that maiden race in which Carl Spackler built that big buyer figure off of was really legitimate, or can he hang with the tough crowd? I'm going to use Carl Spackler, but I will use 2 other horses. More Than Looks, although on time form, looks like he closed into a red fractions and he got the setup. At Nagarok and the other horse that he ran with, they were doing
More Than Looks.
More Than Looks. More Than Looks is the horse I'm betting. But Nagarok in that last race with More Than Looks and Nagarok, he closed well, in my opinion, and moved into the hot part of the race and really earned a huge figure. And I think he's just going to be a big upgrade today. Continues to just get better and better. So I'm really big on the number 1, More Than Looks, considering he's going to get the ground saving trip. The other horse I'm really excited to bet is General Jim, the number 6, Pat Day Mile winner, coming over to the turf. And he has some really great turf form as a 2-year-old.
Right.
And I think he could be really tough as nails in this spot. I would be very fascinated to see if we're going to get 6-1. I think you might get even higher because you have the likes of Nagarok, the speed horse, Carl Spackler, the brown horse, and you got another brown horse in there, Mischievous Angel, who is that great debut,
yes,
and is going to be that question mark of, could he get it done and keep stepping forward? Is he the Chad Brown monster?
And we're not even talking about the other shippers who are turning up in here. So there's some interesting form to parse through for sure. We've got 3 minutes to post back here at Saratoga. Let me just take a very quick look at these at who these Euro horses are. So we've got Ocean Vision. I don't know much about this horse, to be honest. The form is there's some acceptable form that could get it done. You know, looking back at the Doha Group 2 race from being a 2-year-old, very much of an unknown quantity. This one, a horse that should be a big price. You mentioned Mischievous Angel, obviously not a Euro, but an interesting one. The other one, Mysterious Knight, who was so impressive in the Summer Stakes a couple of years ago, and then has looked to not particularly train on. But coming back to the United States, I would not be ruling out a return to form for Mysterious Knight for the Appleby team in here. One to use at a big price, I would say. But for what your strategy is in your contest, I understand why you might want to try to fade.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mysterious. That one is a really hard one to figure out. All in all, those ones I just sit on the sidelines, let them beat me.
It's tough. I mean, when you're beat by 10 lengths in your 2 most recent races, it's hard. But and Appleby, you know, the barn has heated up. You had the cold spell in and around June, but I'm not too. And then obviously, I mean, you can't worry about Rebels Romance the other day, obviously, and we hope Richie Mullen's okay from that one. Talking about Breeders' Cup form, the Breeders' Cup Turf winner came back at Saratoga, and unfortunately, there was an incident with clipping of heels, and Richie Mullen very injured, but is on the mend from everything we're hearing, which is terrific news. Good. So anyway, lots of tie-ins here. Be interesting to see what happens in that Hall of Fame, and I'm glad we talked about that because that's not a race we're going to be covering really anywhere else. And with that in mind, maybe we should take you obviously have a strong opinion in the Oaks, so we'll take a look back at that maybe after we get this race in the books. But we might as well just chat this through until we throw it to Frank for the call. Ran into Frank the other day. He was still trying to decide on his favorite pizza options. I was telling him he's got to come over and try a little Chef Dan pizza in the oven Sunday night. That reminds me, I need to, there's Saratoga invitations and there's real invitations. The Saratoga invitation is you meet somebody quickly and you say, oh yeah, we should do that. But if that's where you leave it, you're not going to see the person because they have 18 things, you have 18 things. They don't know if you're serious. So we need to make that one. We need to make that one real and see if we can get Frank Miramati in the house. We watched Seabiscuit last night, and I had forgotten that. I don't think it's all the old race calls, but at least one of them. I'm almost positive it was Frank doing like an impression of an old-timey announcer. Yes. And I told Perrin, that guy we met and we were talking about pizza with the other day, that's him. Like her mind was blown.
Yeah. Oh, my God. We were actually just talking about Secretariat because someone bought me for my birthday. The
Bill Mack book? The 50th anniversary one with the gold thing?
No, it's a newer book about a horse painting. And it follows 3 timelines, one of which is in the Civil War, and a horse that was a thoroughbred ended up having to do battle in the Civil War.
Oh my God.
Another about a painter in the 1950s who became obsessed in New York, and then one timeline story in the 2000s.
That sounds amazing.
That ended up doing a bunch of archaeological digs on this horse to try and figure out what the breeding was so that they could then pick it for their own breeding pedigrees.
That's crazy. Yes. I need to learn more about this book. Yes. And I should have probably known that you didn't get the Breyer Secretariat as a gift, but Perrin did get that for me for Father's Day, and it's awesome. And we're having a huge movie. It was Perrin's idea to do a sports movie week. So we did A League of Their Own on Monday. Oh. We did a Secretariat on Tuesday. Wednesday was Seabiscuit. And now tonight, if we can figure out how to actually get this done, we're going to watch Let It Ride, the classic.
I was going to say, how many Kleenexes were used to wipe away the tears for those 3 movies? And now we're going to Let It Ride, which is just pure degeneracy.
Yes,
so I love it.
I told her, you've been watching movies about horses. Now you're going to watch a movie about horse players. Speaking of which, we're going to be back soon. I didn't grab one for this week because we had these 2 other pre-tapes, but we're going to be back soon with more betting stories from the 40 years of the Breeders' Cup. What I realized is I think we're going to probably do for our finale a supersized show with pre-tapes where if you make the final table, as part of our playoffs, and I'll explain what I mean by that if you don't know. If you make the final table, you will have the option to share a story, and hopefully we can get 5 of the 10 to give new stories that we don't have. But that's a really fun format that we do for these playoffs that I wish more places would do. I think it makes a truer contest. So our playoffs are going to start off with 80 people. The top, whatever it is it 16? We had some cancellations, so I may be wrong about this, but we're going to have whatever. I think we're going to end up with 14 weeks, and so 28 people from there, and then we'll fill out the rest from the tour. Week 1, 80 players. And then all you have to do, finish in the top half to advance to the next week. So 80 to 40, awesome. 40 to 20, 20 to a final table of 10. And then that final table of 10, we'll get to, assuming everybody's available, we'll get to meet them, talk to them, chat with them. It's going to be great fun. We've done it before. This will be the 3rd year of having a final table, the 4th year overall of Horseplayer Happy Hour. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right. So speaking of Frank Miramati, as long as I don't know, this one horse has a chance to be naughty. If this one horse goes in here, we will send it right to him and let him finish the load and the call as we get ready for the 7th race at Saratoga. Drew on the favorite, the 4 for the contest. I suggested maybe taking a little shot at the 2. Drew also mentioned
I'm having a moment goes in as the odds-on favorite.
Here's Frank.
And Cinderella's Cause to complete the line. They're in the gate. And they're off. Even start. Happy Sophia is going out for the early lead. Rebo's Valentine flashing through along the rail to take over. I'm having a moment is in between them, a close-up 3rd, followed by Security Code. Cinderella's Cause is 5th, about 3 lengths off the leaders. Then Diva Banker, 1 from the rail. Okay Honey is on the fence, and Temperamental at the back of the field. As they come to the half-mile pole, it's Rebo's Valentine in front, 3/4 of a length. I'm having a moment, stalking from 2nd. Then it's Diva Banker. The opening quarter went in 22 and 2/5 seconds. Rounding the far turn, I'm having a moment, turning up the pressure on Rebo's Valentine and taking the lead away, doing so very nicely. 2 lengths back. Diva Banker is in 3rd. Security Code is 4th. On the outside, Temperamental trying to mount a bit and is doing so. White blinkers on the outside. I'm having a moment, turns for home in front by 2. Rebo's Valentine digging in on the inside of Security Code, who's finishing with some interest on the outside. And they're followed by Temperamental, a 16th to go. I'm having a moment. Hall of Famer Bill Mott is having a day. That's his 3rd winner on the afternoon. I'm having a moment. And Junior Alvarado by 4. Security Code was 2nd. Rebo's Valentine 3rd, then Temperamental.
I think we can claim that trifecta as it comes 4-6-2. Maybe not in the most sexy order as far as juicing the payroll goes, but not too bad. And Drew will inch up on the leaderboard, which we'll show in a minute, and then we will get the we'll go to the other pre-tab. You're definitely going to want to stick around. Callum Hellawell doing a great job looking at the last 2 win-in your in races for the Breeders' Cup, the Sussex Stakes, and the King George. Bill Mott is on fire. 3 on the day. Richard points out Bill's birthday continues all week. That's right, because he's a late July, and that was the thing people said for many years was, he had quite a run of winning races on his birthday. And I had done in an early cheeky blog, I had done some research because I had noted that Dawn Schosberg, Rich Schosberg's wife, also had, I can't remember, I think it was the same birthday maybe, and that the Schosbergs had also had, it wasn't quite the record of Mott, but it was like also impressive. So it was like, hey, people point for their Saratoga birthday wins, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see if Bill can keep this up.
You're 1 for 2 right now, at least close to your birthday.
Yeah.
I'm here, but Jen Minton ran 2nd, so I'm sorry to tell you that.
Like I said, I couldn't be happier with the way that horse ran, and we'll see. The tricky thing is seeing what our man Looms Boldly can do. The division that he could possibly run in has a race at Monmouth on Saturday, and they elected not to go. He looked a little slow for it. One of the stable mates is in there, but we're hoping to get maybe we'll get another off turf situation where we can get Looms Boldly in a race up here where he'll look really good. So yeah, we'll see what happens as far as that goes. So we'll wait for this to become official. Throw that up on your screen if you don't mind, so I'll know when they do such a good job. One thing I didn't mention that's embarrassing: where you can play Horseplayer Happy Hour. Horseplayers.com. That's the website, official qualifying site for Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats and also for the NHC, which you had the experience of getting to for the first time. I think, was it your first time there last year?
Yeah, it was.
Well, it was your first time playing, but you and I had gone years ago to do some business.
Right? Yeah. We had gone out there to do some business. I just roamed around. I think I hung out with, actually, that's where I really became friends with some of the contest players, Matt and Brad and all the guys that we're going to be hanging out with this weekend.
Awesome.
And then when you actually play in it, it is just hope and pray and cling on because nothing's going to prepare you for it.
The other thing besides horseplayers.com to give a good shout out to is the sister site horsetourneys.com, where you can do a lot of qualifiers to live money contests where Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats are on the line. I'm going to commit the cardinal sin of asking a question I don't know the answer to, but the live money contest this weekend through Monmouth.
Yes.
Are there BCBC seats in that?
There sure is. Yeah. I think I don't know, because they write them a little based on 150 entries.
Gotcha.
They're projecting 2 BCBC seats.
Great.
And I actually should have it pulled up here somewhere.
They close early sometimes. I'm not 100% sure they're still open, but check out. Brian Skirka does such a great job running those contests, and BCBC seats are almost always, whenever possible, they are part of the prize pool. So they're, good, very good partners to our friends at the Breeders' Cup who are sponsoring this. What does it say on there? 2
BCBC seats and 2 NHC seats as well. And you can sign up on ExpressBet all the way up until the races.
Okay.
If you're doing, I think it's FanDuel TVG or through Brian, you've got to do it earlier, and then you get a bonus if you're playing on site. Brian,
nice reason to go down to Monmouth. Now I would do nothing. I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from being at Saratoga for Whitney Day, but if I'm on the Jersey Shore, I might just drive over to Monmouth. A beautiful facility in its own right, for sure. All right, great info there. Let's look at this leaderboard. Rich maintains his lead. Scangarello. I don't know why I was having trouble with the Latin L's before, but Scangarello I can say. 55-30 there. Kirk Rockwell, Kevin Lux, Andrew Whelan, Mark Stovall, David Chen, Brendan Snodgrass, Seth Wilkie, Silky Wilkie, Chris Couples, one of our regular commenters, Evan Trommer, veteran name in the contest world, Michael Oldham, Joel Balthazar, Stephen McNatten, Jim Colbert, and Matt Miller, with Michael Domable from the In the Money family right in behind in 16th. Keep going down to find
one more there.
There's Drew. Drew's inching his way up in 21st. So you're definitely drawing live here, closing out 2-3-2. So yeah, we'll have a lot of fun while we get ready.
I think so.
I don't know. Are you going to run over to I didn't ask you this before production meeting in the middle of the show. Are you going to run over the track for the end of the day, or stay here and drink beer and help me get ready for this group of people that we might not have anywhere to put if it continues to rain?
I think the latter.
Okay, good.
I think the latter.
We like that. Richard asked about Kent DeSormo. Can he start winning big races again? I mean, if he keeps his act together, he's still so talented. But it's hard. You got to earn back trust and things like that. I mean, it's not going to be easy, and there's a lot of competition in terms of that. But I certainly wouldn't put it past him. He's had an awful lot of comebacks. So there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, let us, Craig, get ready to look at some of this win and you're in action from across the pond with our next guest. Next up, as promised, we're going to look back at some of the overseas win and you're in action from just the last few days. To do that with us, we bring in a man you've seen on these airwaves before. You've also seen him if you're watching internationally on Sky Sports Racing. And if you were at Glorious Goodwood, you saw him doing the race day presenting there. That was cool to see. Callum Hellowell, how are things?
I am very good, Peter. Exceptionally tired. I didn't get back to London until about 1 o'clock this morning. I was straight back in the office at 7 back in London. So we haven't stopped, but I'm keeping going. Got coffee on the go. If you cut me, I would bleed black coffee right now, but I am loving it. Absolutely loving it. I'd rather be busy than doing nothing. So I'm totally busy, always on the go, trying to keep up with all this blimmin' racing.
Well, we're going to do this recap different than any others you've done for these races, because we're going to specifically target the USA horse player who maybe doesn't follow the international storylines day in, day out, and the big Breeders' Cup fan who, typically ends up scrambling to figure out who these Europeans are in the 2 weeks before the Breeders' Cup. There's some high-level storylines from these last two win and you're in races that I want them to be aware of earlier than they usually are. We'll start by going back to last weekend and the King George at Ascot, and give us an overview of the importance of this race and let us know what happened this year.
Okay, to keep it very, very simple, this never happens in British racing. The rarity of this race to happen the way it did is so, so rare. Because we have to put in perspective, everybody showed up. Everybody that was anybody in the 1.5 mile division, so that's 1 mile and 4 furlongs, showed up. The 12 furlong gang arrived, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. We saw the Derby first and second from this year. We saw the Irish Derby winner from last year. We saw the Coronation Cup winner from last year, who's returning from a huge injury absence to take his place to run. We had August Rodin, who was probably the most highly hyped horse out of Aidan O'Brien's yard, and remember that yard has turned out some superstars, including Galileo, the most highly hyped horse since that horse then, and they all showed up to run in the King George. It was 3-year-olds versus 4-year-olds. It was fascinating on paper, and the race lived up to the billing, and it was a thrilling finale, which was a head-bobbing finish between Hookham, who was the horse who won the Coronation Cup, was massively injured, thought his career was over. He then returned like a championship heavyweight fighter, George Foreman-esque. He came back and he beat Westover in an absolute thrilling finale. Westover running a great race under Rob Hornby, just denied by Hookham, who is now 6th, winning this King George. In behind him was King of Steel, who I can only compare to an absolute tank. He's about just shy of 18 hands. His withers are the size of me. He is the biggest thing I've ever seen. He represents Roger Varian's yard. He's only a baby. He's got so little experience. He ran the race of his life to finish 3rd. I think he's going to be a player when it comes to Breeders' Cup. Look at his ownership. His owners love to go overseas and are desperate for a Breeders' Cup horse. It wouldn't surprise me if he was one of the main contenders to go over there for one of the Breeders' Cup options out there, because he's very flexible with trip. That'll be fascinating. Big, beautiful grey colt. Got the world at its feet.
Presumably Breeders' Cup turf, or do you think that there's a chance for a cutback to the mile there?
No, I think he's going to go for the turf. I think he wouldn't be surprised to see him entered in both. I would not be surprised to see him entered in both, but the turf would look like the ideal opportunity. Saratoga isn't as... where are we this year? We're Del Mar this year, aren't we?
Del Mar's next year, Santa Anita.
Santa Anita this year. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to work out where my flight's going, Peter. I think he'll be able to handle the track conditions over the 1.5 miles, but if they are concerned, the drop back to the mile wouldn't hinder him. It would hinder the likes of Hookham and Westover. They'll need the turf. They'll need to do that classic. But to drop back to the mile, I think would be totally fine for a horse like for King of Steel.
The tricky thing at this time of year is there's so many major targets. It's not like over here where people from now are target. They pick Breeders' Cup and work backwards. With so many other targets over there, it's not going to say it's the afterthought, but it's never going to be like the main seasonal goal in the same way. But this is a race that folks should be going to flipping over elsewhere on YouTube and watching and getting familiar with the form. But that's an interesting shout out for King of Steel, particularly with connections that seem hungry for Breeders' Cup participation.
Hell bent. They were hungry for a Royal Ascot winner, and they got 2 this year. And they are hell bent on a Breeders' Cup winner. Kia Jabakaran is a big player in the soccer world, and he's really turning into a very big player in the equine racing world. And I think they want a Breeders' Cup winner, and I think they'll be hoping King of Steel if the horse does it for them. I would be almost convinced that he's on a plane heading over to the States come Breeders' Cup time.
Love that. What of August Rodin? What was the story coming out of the race for the underperformance? And do you think there's a chance he could end his season in California?
To be honest, we've got to find out from Aidan. I bumped into Aidan yesterday at Goodwood. He said they're not planning on retiring him. That was the first thing, because I thought, are they going to protect his stud value now? He's such an interestingly bred horse. But I'm interested to see where they go with it. It could be Irish Champion stake as a redemption. back over 1.25 miles, see how he gets on there, and then see where they go from there. But he has to step up from his last one. He looked like a broken horse last time. I mean, he travelled wide and he stopped quickly. And he was one of the real disappointments of that race. But he comes in with so much hype and so much potential. And I just believe he has talent. We saw that with his 2 Derby victories. The victory at the Epsom Derby was just phenomenal. If he can repeat to that level of form and they find out what went amiss at Ascot, then hopefully he'll come back to his own. And then he could be another one that they would consider Breeders' Cup with the option. But there's just so many opportunities for horses to do this. He's another one that's very flexible. He could go to an arc. And that's a crazy thing. Like, he wouldn't be all at sea in an arc, but they're probably thinking, we don't want that arc ground. They don't want to be running around in the slop in Paris, which would then throw America as an option because you know you're going to get a better surface. I say, keeping our fingers crossed.
Out in California, we should be okay. But yes, fingers crossed is always a good idea. You mentioned that interesting bloodline, the Galileo crossed with the Japanese blood.
Yeah.
Very, very fascinating indeed. Let's pivot to talk about the Sussex Stakes, the race that you previewed for us on the early week show, which was a thrilling running. Give us the overview of the importance of the Sussex and then your view on what we saw.
Well, I think to start off, we have to talk about Paddington, the race winner. Now, there are horses who are tough. There are horses that are brave, but there are not very many horses I've seen in my live team who are tough, brave, and classy. Plenty of tough horses out there that don't have class. Plenty of brave horses out there that aren't that tough. But this horse will take you to places you don't want to go. Frank Tory was on his spiral. He ranged up on the outside to take on Paddington for the lead. We all stood there watching. I was stood with all the owners and all the connections in my little special area because I'm a big time now. Did you know? With all the connections, and they go, "Oh, Frankie's gone hard early," and he literally put it to Paddington. He sacrificed his own race to put it to Paddington, and Paddington said, "Not today." Pushed him aside, literally pushed him aside, and then out of nowhere, Factor Cheval, who was around 30-odd to 1, come from France, hasn't won a race in longer than I've been alive, turns up swinging on the outside. He's got another battle of hand. Paddington looks at him and says, no, to the side you go. Powers away again. It was so impressive because it didn't just show class. It showed that toughness and that competitive spirit to bow your head in battle and battle out on not ideal going conditions. The ground on that round course was soft, heavy in places. It was really on the heavy side of soft, to be honest. The rain had fallen all day, but he wasn't for passing, he wasn't for beating, and he has just looked unbeatable this year.
The interesting thing I noticed about his campaign is its resemblance to that of Giant's Causeway, the Iron Horse. And that's fascinating, of course, from a Breeders' Cup perspective, because we got to see him not even on the turf, but on the dirt. I mean, with that, and I noticed that Paddington is in the betting for the Breeders' Cup Classic at this point. What is your best guess as to what the rest of his campaign will look like?
My best guess is not what I want to happen. So my guess would be he goes to the Irish Champion Stakes, where they move August Rodan to a different option. And then after that, he then is traveling over he's then going to go to America after that. What I would like to happen is I'd like to go see him run in an arc. Now, this is crazy because the trip is so challenging and there are lots of different factors. But I would personally think like running in an arc could be a huge game changer for him because he's got that Monjou in his pedigree. He's got that line that suggests stamina is there in abundance. And we know he's going to try. Will he be able to put it up to those hard-hitting 1.5 mile 6 horses? We're not sure, especially if it's a slop in Paris. But do not be surprised to see him go there. There's another call. The Australians are thinking they're trying to ruin you guys today because we want him to go to a Cox Plate, which is completely together because it drops him back and trip. It sticks to a sound surface and it's on a really tight course. You know where they run in the Cox Plate. It's basically on rails. So it's fascinating to see he's got so many options in front of him. But if he was to go to the Breeders' Cup, I could see him doing the mile on the turf and just having probably an easier target than that. Because I think of all the 3 options, the mile turf compared to the 1.5 mile turf compared to the 1.5 mile classic, which would just be insane, is probably the option. And I think they do want to protect him a little bit. Giant's Causeway was an iron horse, but I don't think, but his stud value did kind of reflect that. He wasn't seen as a classy animal. I think this horse has a little bit of class.
Interesting stuff. It's going to be fascinating following it. We'll have you here with us throughout the rest of the season, giving some views on these horses we'll be seeing. Really appreciate you coming on here today, Callum, and we look forward to chatting with you soon.
Looking forward to it. Can't wait. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Love that kid. Love his energy. And the audience loves him too, because look here, Rob wants to know if we can get Callum to come to Saratoga. Well, that's really up to the man next to me, the business manager, if we can get him to sign off on the flight. But maybe we can, we'll come up with something. We do have Vanessa Ryle coming in this weekend to be hosting our Whitney preview show. And we should put in a big plug for that, because that's going to be live on YouTube, 9:30 tomorrow night. It's sold out. The tickets never even made it to the general public. The TaylorMade Medallion partners bought them all up. So we're going to be doing that live at the FASIC Tipton Sales Pavilion. But you can watch here on YouTube. And, of course, it'll be available on demand, inthemoneypodcast.com, or right here on the In the Money YouTube channel. And if you are watching this replay, feel free to chime in on any of the stuff we've been talking about. Give us your idea of the Breeders' Cup Classic winner. Let us know where you think Paddington should run at the Breeders' Cup. I think you can make good cases for Classic, Mile, and the Turf. It's going to be very fun to follow all of these divisions from now until the end of the season. But we have some much more pressing business for those of you watching live.
Yes.
Because Drew has reached into his pocket. He's betting here. He's got some thoughts on these next couple races at Saratoga, and I told him he should share those thoughts with you before we get out of here. What's the theory behind this bet, and what numbers we use?
Yeah, so it's pipeline, which I'm not going to waste our time with this as we get close to the end of the show. I think lays over the field, and the betting public agrees with that. And then you look into the ninth
Pipeline
race,
being a big favorite here. In other
huge favorite. Probably going off at 1-2, maybe a smidge shorter. And then you go into the Glen Falls, the highlight race of the day. Warlike Goddesses 3-5. The double pipeline into Warlike Goddess is paying $1. So you wager $1, allegedly you get back $1. It's so when you look
when you say $1, you mean even money.
No, because how the probables are calculated, it's not a 3-2-1 proposition. It is $1 return.
So it's basically paying $1.80 or whatever.
Yeah, it's
something under even money.
Brutally low.
Gotcha.
So why not take a couple shekels, if you were, and just throw it on two horses that I really, really like, and I think I have an upside, because I don't like Warlike Goddess that much. I really haven't. I think this horse has been a little flatter, beating up on some not great horses in like the grade 3 Bewitch, and then coming back into New York and getting absolutely.
Well, it was short of her best distance, I think you could say.
Yes, but I do like Amazing Grace a lot. I think Amazing Grace went a little too long with our old friend British Royalty.
Oh yeah,
then
former podcast winner.
Yes, then 2 back, just didn't like the surface maybe, and then when we go back off the layoff in the Orchid, ran the race that could win this one today.
Interesting. What kind of price are we looking at in the double bull?
35-1.
Okay.
35-1.
Yeah.
So, and then
that's a why not.
And then the 5, Soprana Basilia.
Sounds about right.
An Irish horse at 15-1, ran a stormer, as they say over across the pond, closing into some neutral fractions, and looks like had to have a bit of a troubled trip. Graham Motion, trainer, coming out of a race that I don't really know a lot of the horses, but maybe could make an advancement, and has a really strong Italian form based on time form, 108, 101. So,
I mean, this run to White Beam, a grade 1 Diana winner, certainly leaps off the page.
And there you go. And guess what that's paying? 45-1.
Yeah, I like it. So taking a little shot, leaning on one fave, trying to bet against the next fave.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell a very quick story here, because there is some sort of traffic jam on my block. And and if you know how quiet the little house on the east side is, this is like almost impossible that this is happening.
Is this caused by you?
I don't know if Chef Dan's truck is in the street. I don't know what's going on, but the last time something like this happened, I walked out there to investigate, and it was a neighbor. This story, it ends kind of dark. I warn you now. There was a neighbor who was very upset at some of my guests for like parking in a place where, how on a narrow block there were 2 cars parked. I mean, because my friend was dropping something off. She was going to be there for 30 seconds. This guy started yelling. I knew he was a neighbor, so I was like, oh, this is going to be a low probability for. I went out all smiles and happiness to try to just say, oh, dude, I'm sorry, we live here. We're we pay. Anyway, I was wearing a hat like this. The guy took a swing at me. He was drunk, and he took a swing at me and knocked the hat off my head. And I was shocked. And before I could even respond, my great friend, very giant man, he's less giant now. He lost a lot of weight, but he's still extremely tall. And he was a bouncer in bars of Boston for years. He knocked this. He didn't punch him. He did like this kind of move, push. He knocked the guy without hurting him, knocked the guy into the middle of next week. It was absolutely hilarious. The police came. It was a whole big schmozzle. So I am not going out to do anything with that traffic jam. But I said the story ended dark. This guy, the problem guy, smoking in bed, the house burned down. He's not my neighbor anymore. No one died, but he's not my neighbor anymore. And I have to say, that aspect, I wish ill on no one, but I don't mind that he's not my neighbor anymore.
So 2 PSAs. 1, don't smoke in bed or smoke cigarettes in general. And 2, use words over violence.
Yes,
That's the main message?
That's how we roll
right.
here at In the Money Media. We're out of time. We're going to thank Drew for stopping by. We'll thank Callum and that Mapper Near guy. Always wonderful to have him on these shows. Producer Craig did a great job putting everything together. Everybody who played, we love all the support. We want more of it. Tell your friends, Haley and Justin especially, but really everybody over at the Breeders' Cup. Looking forward to seeing so many people with all these industry folks in town. For our friends at the Breeders' Cup, for In the Money Media, for Drew and me, I'm Peter Thomas Fornatel. May you win all your photos.